Thanks, Dr. Cox. Okay, for the invitation to speak here. It's a real honor. I'm very excited to be amongst you all. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I'm looking forward to catching up with some friends and colleagues that I haven't seen for a while. It's great to see the students here. I'm really happy to see that, and I think that moving forward, a lot more conferences should have open days where the public can join in our discussions, because that's how we communicate what we're doing a lot more efficiently, I think. Where are we? Okay. So a few disclosures here. Just like Aubrey, I sort of dedicated my life, my career to understanding the science behind regenerative medicine and communicating that, educating regenerative medicine and the science behind aging, because it's something that's not taught in medical schools, and it's very hard to get that information. So I spent a lot of time on the circuit, speaking at conferences, educating about these subjects. But also, I'm the founder of Neobiosis, and I'm just highlighting this here because I will be talking about some of the products we've developed there. But also, in addition to the conferences that I attend, I spend a lot of time with the American College of Regenerative Medicine. I'm the vice president and a member of the board of directors there. You can see us at FACRM.org. I'm also on the board of scientific advisors for the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, which has been mentioned a couple of times already today, and the co-founder of the Space Aging Research Institute. And we are currently looking for funding, which is a very nice follow-in from the last presentation, for our space aging related research. So hopefully there's going to be some discussion there. So another thing that Aubrey and I have in common is that we both subscribe to the same hypothesis about aging, that it's an issue with damage accumulation. When we're young, we are very vibrant, we have very flexible skin, we have great hair, we have fantastic eyesight, we have good hearing, all these fantastic things that are maintained through homeostasis. But as we age, we lose those. One area where Aubrey and I may diverge slightly, and I think that's important in scientific exploration, is for everybody to have come to the table with their own hypotheses. Whereas Aubrey might discuss the accumulation of damage, getting to a point where it overwhelms our ability to fix it, I sort of subscribe to an idea where we actually turn off the process of regeneration. So we maintain homeostasis for a period of time, and we have evolved ways to turn that off in order to exit us from the gene pool. I know that's a bit of a controversial statement, but there is a lot of data to support it. I'm going to show you some things today as well. So this is a very oversimplified example of aging. The idea here is, well, first of all, before I go on, let me ask a question. How many of you in this room today are alive? Okay, most of you, that's great. Okay, so the reason you're alive is because we have an innate ability to regenerate our tissues. We are losing millions and millions of cells every single minute, and if those cells aren't replaced and replenished, we would die pretty quickly. So those cells are repaired and replenished through endogenous pools of stem cells. And again, this is a very oversimplified version of aging, but you could think of aging as this sort of supply and demand issue. When we're very young, we have this huge supply of stem cells that are able to manufacture new tissue, new organs, new cells, but as we age, we sort of deplete that pool, but our demand continues to go up. So we get to a point in old age and death where we just don't have the capacity to repair and maintain homeostasis, and so we expire. So these endogenous stem cell pools reside in all our different organs. We have tissue-specific stem cells, and as we age, those pools exhaust and they become senescent, and we run into all of the phenomena that we associate with the aging process. Now, I think I have to point it at the computer. Now, if the issue of aging was simply just the accumulation of damage that eventually overwhelms the system, and we can no longer deal with the rigors of just being around through time, then you wouldn't see species that exist like the Galapagos tortoise that can live over 200 years. You wouldn't see examples like the Greenland shark here that can live over 400 years. They're still living through time. There's still radiation damage, there's still metabolic damage, there's still accumulation of errors that exist through those 400 years. But what's different is that they maintain a very robust ability to repair that damage. And so that's where I'm coming from, is the perspective of repair. We innately have an ability to repair and maintain homeostasis. We progressively lose that ability as we get older, but there are some species that maintain it. Greenland shark is one example, lobsters are another. There's a bit of a misnomer out there that lobsters are immortal. They're not immortal, they do die, but they show no signs of aging. They just continue growing through their entire lifespan. They continue reproducing. I just had this conversation with somebody just a minute ago. A 50-year-old lobster really looks identical to a 1-year-old lobster, except that it's larger. And the only way that lobsters really die is either we eat them, because they're delicious, or they die from disease, or they die from exhaustion during the molting process. They just grow so large, and they get so old, they don't have the metabolics, they don't have the energy to actually go through that molting process, and they collapse under their own weight and die. Here's just one more example before I move on. This is Teratopsis dornii. It's a very exciting organism. It's also known as the immortal jellyfish. And what this species does is that it goes from a juvenile, a polyp, and it matures into an adult over time. It becomes sexually active. It reproduces. And then it says, you know what, I'm done with being an adult. I want to be a juvenile again. And it just de-differentiates its tissues back to being a polyp. And it just keeps doing that over and over again. So it goes from juvenile to adult, adult to juvenile, throughout many, many, many years. And again, the only reason they really die is because of predation and disease. They don't show any hallmarks of aging. So there are examples in nature that demonstrate there are mechanisms that exist, we've just got to find them, that can de-age our tissues in a way that will actually address the fundamental problems of our aging. And of course, you're probably familiar with some of this story already. The idea that we can take human cells and de-age them won the Nobel Prize in 2012. Shinji Yamanaka published this paper on 4 growth differentiation factors that are able to you're able to go from an adult, mature skin cell with these 4 factors, you're able to de-differentiate them back to an embryonic-like stem cell. So these technologies exist in nature. They exist in nature and they exist in science. And there's an even more common example of that, which you may be familiar with, is making a baby. So when you're an adult, let's say you're a 30 or 40-year-old adult and you want to make a baby, all of the cells in your body are aging as you are. They're still going through the same accumulation of damage, the same aging process. But as soon as you make a baby, the process of the egg being fertilized and generating a new human being resets the clock. You don't have a 40-year-old baby, you have a 0-year-old baby. So again, these mechanisms exist in nature to take old cells, to take senescent cells, whatever you want to call it, to take the aging process and turn it off, reverse it, and reset it. So that's where my interest comes in. So there's a phenomenon that exists in nature that is described in birth. Okay, why am I not progressing? That we can take advantage of and use as a countermeasure against aging. So again, when we're first born, in fact, when we're a fetus, we have a 100% regeneration capacity. If you damage a fetus in utero, it can repair itself without any indications that it was ever damaged, for the most part. But as we age, we lose that ability. We become incomplete regeneration. If you fell over when you were young, you scratched your knees, you would probably heal very fast with very little pain and very little scarring. You do that today as an adult, you heal a lot more slowly and with a lot more pain, I might add. What am I supposed to be pointing at here, Mike? Okay. So I'm really interested in the birth tissue as a countermeasure for anti-aging. And here's an example of why I specifically focus on young tissue as opposed to old bone marrow, old adipose. Because when you're first born, you have a huge capacity to regenerate. This is an example of MSCs. We know that MSCs are not stem cells, canonical stem cells, but it's just an example published by Arnold Kaplan a few years ago. When we're born, we have this huge capacity to regenerate. Our cells are immensely regenerative. But as soon as we're born, we get this precipitous drop in regenerative potential. So this is teen, if you can't see from the back, 30 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old. So the MSCs in our bodies, and just like any other regenerative cell that follows the same, we lose this ability to heal and regenerate as we get older. But at the very beginning of life, and if you're familiar with any of my research on cardiac regeneration, I focus on cardiac regeneration from the neonate because that's a period where we can actually regenerate the heart. And I've been able to extend that window of regeneration into weeks, when usually it's over after a couple of days. Sorry. Okay, so again, my company is called Neobiosis, and the name comes from these experiments from heterochronic parabiosis. And if you're not familiar, I'll just quickly explain them and the power of young tissues. So what the scientists did here was they took an old mouse and a young mouse, and they sutured them together so that they shared a blood supply. Now that blood supply conferred something from the young mouse to the old mouse that the authors referred to as rejuvenating factors. And what they saw was the old mouse got younger and the young mouse got older. So they shared something that we now know are exosomes, and you don't even have to suture the animals together now. You could just take plasma from a young mouse and you can inject it into an old mouse and you can see the same rejuvenating effects. And if you're familiar with some of my work and some of my other presentations, I talk a lot about this in the context of entropy. I'm not going to talk about entropy today, but if you're interested in entropy and why we age due to that, I'm happy to talk offline. I'm going to be here for the next few days. Very happy to meet you to talk about that. So here's some of my work, and this doesn't seem to be loading, but let's just give it a second. Sorry about that. So it may not come up, but it's okay. So to give you an idea of how we can utilize young signals as a countermeasure for aging, I sort of touched on this just a second ago. This is some of my work on cardiac regeneration. Actually, I forgot I had this slide in here, else I would have waited to mention it. So what I did here was I took a young heart, a neonatal mouse heart, and I put it in a Petri dish. And I used cardiac growth factors that are usually used for monolayers of cardiomyocytes. And the heart dies. The heart dies very, very quickly. So you can't really study anything with the heart because all you're studying is apoptosis. But if I put in very specific signals that are present at the very early developmental points of cardiac development in utero, I'm able to keep this heart alive for extended periods of time. And what's not loading here is a video. In fact, I can't even progress, Mike. I don't know if, can I do it on the computer? Okay. Oh, it's coming up really slowly. So, just in case I can get that to go. No.
Just click right. Use your hand. Just click right on it.
No, it's not going. Okay, that's okay. So anyway, what you would have seen here is this heart's beating. So again, when you take a heart out of a mouse and you put it in a Petri dish, it's dying, it's dead. What we're able to do here over the course of several weeks is keep that heart beating, keep it alive in these growth factors that are from young tissues, from the early signals that the heart generates during its development. In fact, we were able to take that one step further. I don't have the slide here, but in order to study cardiac regeneration and longevity when it comes to the heart, because as you know, cardiovascular disease kills more people than anything else in the United States, we were able to change the culture conditions again slightly and incorporate the signals that nerves provide. And not only were we able to keep the heart alive, we were actually able to get it to regenerate for months in advance. So we were able to injure the heart, see extracellular matrix form, an influx of cells, and a regeneration of the heart, just by changing the signals, by providing the right signals, the signals the body needs to heal itself. And these are the signals that maintain homeostasis that we lose as we get older. So I mentioned heterochronic parabiosis. There's a natural form of heterochronic parabiosis, and that's pregnancy. So we go back again to this idea that birth tissue, the youngest tissue, is the source of potential countermeasures for the aging process. So what we do at Neobiosis is we take amniotic fluid from consenting mothers at full term cesarean sections from healthy babies, and through a proprietary method, we're able to isolate out the EVs. And we heard earlier about EVs being used as a countermeasure for administering senolytics. There are over 300 bioactive proteins and growth factors in this amniotic fluid that's been purified, and about 400 billion EVs per milliliter. And we're able to use that therapeutically. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go back to this slide and just remind you that when we're younger, we have this huge capacity to regenerate. When we're older, we lose that capacity to regenerate. And I use this quote from Dr. Orgel as well. The body's capacity to repair the skin diminishes as we get older. There just aren't as many growth factors and stem cells in the skin. So that sort of summarizes everything that I've said up to this point. So what if we could then convince the skin that it's younger? So if when we injure our skin as we're older, or if we're in space, this is why I started the Space Aging Research Institute, because if you get a wound in space, it doesn't heal very well. The immune system's collapsed, and we lose the ability to heal the skin. But what if we were able to convince the skin that it was a baby skin, it was young skin again? Is there a way that we can do that? Well, we published this case report recently. This is, sorry, I should have mentioned that there might be some slides in here that, especially before lunch, might be a little bit unsettling for your tummy. But if you'll forgive me, I'd definitely like to show you these slides. So there's going to be a couple more, so turn away if you're a bit queasy. This is the leg of a female adult who was the victim of a firework accident this last year. A firework fell over, shot into the crowd, and exploded, and you can see this on the news. They caught it on CCTV. Very bad accident, and she almost lost her leg. But she had these third-degree burns, and you can see here they're very extensive burns. So her standard of care would be to debride. She was on opioids for the pain. They couldn't change her dressings. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't shower. She was in 10 out of 10 pain. But she happened to work in a clinic that utilizes the countermeasures, the products that we manufacture at Neobiosis. And so we donated a product to her, and we said, spray it on the wound. So this is the wound. This is the day of application. And what the physicians, the burn physicians, were predicting is 2 to 3 months recovery with extensive skin grafting. This is 6 days later. So the adult skin, when it would normally take 2 to 3 months, take 2 to 3 months to recover because of its age, has been tricked into thinking that it's young, and it is regenerated like it would when it was a child. Here's another example. This is an example of periderma gangrenosum. This was a bite wound from a dog, and for months this patient continued to get worse. With standard of care, nothing was improving this patient until they got to a point where they were amputation candidate. At that point, they reached out to us and said, is there anything that you can recommend? And again, we donated product. This was 5 months in the making. This just from just a couple of teeth marks. It involved the entire leg. This was application over the course of a month. And so not only did they save the leg, but also you can see that the tissue regenerated as well. 1 month topical application. And I've got one more for you. Sorry, my slides are very uncooperative today. Okay, so we have a lot of issue with diabetes in the United States. This patient is a diabetic, and he had a cardiac arrest and went into hospital. And while he was in bed, he developed an ulcer, a diabetic ulcer. This is on the Achilles tendon. And over the course of 4 to 5 months, they applied standard of care, and nothing was helping. The wound just kept getting larger and larger. You can see there's a lot of inflammation, but this is completely devoid of blood vessels in here, so you couldn't get any stem cells, you couldn't get any growth factors to the site to repair the injury. And there are millions and millions of Americans every single year experiencing these kinds of diabetic wound ulcers that are non-healing, refractory to treatment. So what we did with our chief medical officer is that we applied purified amniotic fluid twice daily, topical. This wound is so deep you can even see the cartilage from the collagen from the Achilles tendon here coming out. Over the course of 3 months, you can see progressively it got to a point where it's completely healed. Again, this is refractory to standard of care. Nothing was helping this guy at this point. And I forgot to mention, the pain of the burn victim went from a 10 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10 within 30 minutes. The same thing with this guy. He was in excruciating pain, and that pain completely went away over the course of a few hours, and he remained pain-free pretty much for the entire duration until the skin had completely healed. Again, we're convincing the skin that it's young, and it's using the repair mechanisms that are endogenous to its body, to our body, to heal and repair the wound. So this is essentially my last slide, and I wanted to just draw to your attention that 80% of people over the age of 65 are going to experience some form of debilitating disease associated with aging, whether it's hypertension, high cholesterol, arthritis, or heart disease, etc. These are the 10 of the big ones. And we're spending about $4.1 trillion annually fighting these diseases. Now, my company and my research is up here. I'm not interested in curing necessarily heart disease or high cholesterol. What I'm interested in doing is understanding why we age and we get all those things. So my research is upstream of all of these diseases that we're currently throwing $4.1 trillion a year at. I started my lab for $1 million. And we've become revenue positive. With that revenue, we've been able to build a state-of-the-art CGMP facility that's been FDA inspected, it's been inspected by state regulators. We've we've manufactured about 30,000 vials of these products. We've distributed over $400,000 worth of product to patients in need, 3 of them you saw there. And that revenue has allowed us to actually provide to communities like in Puerto Rico, where they can't really afford a lot of the medicines that we can afford in the United States. So we're able to provide these countermeasures at an affordable cost. And we've literally donated thousands of product to communities like that too. So again, this is where we're at. We've done it with very little money, but imagine what we could do with more support. Right? I basically, with my team, I'll just go to the next slide so you can see the team. With my team, we have built this out of nothing. If we could get more support from governments, if we could get more support from funding bodies, we would be much more successful. The achievements that we've made in the last 2 years are remarkable. This is only a small sample. I could talk all day about the things that we've seen and the things that we've done. But if you're interested to know more about what we're doing, again, check out the Space Aging Research Institute. I'm looking for funding there. Check out the American College of Regenerative Medicine. I would encourage you to become a member. And I'll be here for the next few days, so please feel free to grab me if you'd like a conversation. Thank you.
Wow, that was extraordinary. Thank you so much. That was great. If we've got any key questions for him briefly, we could do that, but I know that we're going to prepare to move into our panel. And fortunately, Dr. White is going to be here for the next couple of days. So there's burning questions anyone's got?
There's one at the
Please,
front.
I'll bring over. Yeah, here.
Hi, Phil Merkins again from IS. Sorry, it's more of a comment again.
That's all right.
I'm a bit bad like that. But it's great. Really enjoyed it. And I want to agree with you that I'm a recovering pharmacologist. So with that in mind, I always in my career have listened very carefully if anyone has ever said that was a so-and-so military secret, or this is in the space program, or the army is doing that, because they're always leagues ahead of what the public know about, for all kinds of reasons. So I'd love to have a conversation with you, because I know what the cosmonauts use.
Okay.
So, but I think it's very important that we share internationally, because there are, in my career, a gazillion things out there that when you tell people, they go, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
And yet there are things in other countries that are in almost everyday use, but nobody knows about them.
Right.
So
It's hard in the United States. The regulations here are really, really tough, and I think we're going to hear about that later. But we make an eye drop, a really, really good eye drop, really effective, biologic, natural eye drop. And the FDA just put out a warning letter last week, warning everybody about the dangers of amniotic fluid-derived eye drops when there have been 0 reports of adverse events. 0.
No, I agree. I'll just say one thing very quickly. I believe AI needs to help us, at least in one respect. There are 1 million publications every year in the medical field. There are 50 million online. Goodness knows more how much are in the libraries that aren't online. AI needs to read everything that's ever been published. Why? Because maybe then we'll actually learn what we've already discovered. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for that. I think there was one more.
Yeah, please, up front, and then we'll move on to our panel on this question. Okay, thank you so much.
Your presentation reminded me a lot of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves. Have you ever seen that, where they rub the placental tissue on wounds and they heal almost immediately?
Yeah.
Were you inspired by that?
No, that is a good movie, and I do like science fiction. But I was inspired really by an early video that I saw of a salamander limb growing back, and I wondered why we didn't have the ability to heal like that. I started looking more into it, and I realized actually we do have the ability to heal. It just looks different than a lot of other species. And then when I started studying the role of nerves in tissue regeneration, that sort of changed my whole career path at that point.
Interesting. I had a question specifically about the applications of your technology. You used a mouse heart in a petri dish, but as far as for clinicals for people, it was only for external topical application. I see like great use of this in things like heart failure in patients. You just mentioned regulatory. Is regulatory the reason this hasn't expanded into those arenas?
Yeah, so just to be clear, those 2 examples were very different. The mouse heart was very specific growth factors that we took from the literature and we applied, whereas the clinical examples were actually the product that we've manufactured from amniotic fluid. But yes, it's very, very hard to utilize these products. I mean, there are household name people that I can't mention now that use these products, our products, on a regular basis. And they should be able to talk about them, they should be able to use them, but they just can't because of regulations. And I'm a big fan of regulations. We need to work closely with the FDA, but there has to be some dialogue, and we're going to talk about this later, so I don't want to go on too much about it. But right now, it's a deadlock. We can't progress, and we're just wasting time, we're wasting opportunities. Patients that deserve access to these therapies just don't have access.
Okay. Ian, thank you so much.